Welcome to the Buck Brief. We are about a week away from the election, so let's dive into where things stand right now. Kamala Harris is an absolute disaster of a candidate. That has been true for, well, all along, but more and more apparent as her appearances have increased because she couldn't actually hide from the electorate. She couldn't actually just allow the media to make the case for her that she should be president. And now we have the final moments of this campaign from the Democrats devoted to Trump is Hitler, January 6th was an insurrection, and if they, meaning the Democrats, lose, democracy is over. I don't know how to describe this in better terms than to just be honest. This is a mental illness. I don't know what you would call it, a pandemic of the mind, a mass hysteria. It is absurd. There's nothing about this that makes sense. There's no chance that Donald Trump would become a fascist. And I, as a ardent Trump supporter, would not allow a Nazi takeover of the government that would end elections and end all of our freedoms. The fact that they even say this stuff out loud and from the very top, this isn't the old way was Democrats would have henchmen, if you will, in the media and, dirty tricks Politico types who would do the dirty tricks oppo and would take the nasty shots at the other side and try to undermine them with the most gutter politics. No, this is coming from Kamala and the campaign. They say this. This is, in fact, the primary message. It's not a secondary thing. It's not like I'm seizing on something that doesn't really matter to them all that much. But Kamala Harris is really trying to tell people that Donald Trump is a Nazi. This is just mentally unwell, ill, whatever you want to say about it. It doesn't add up. And it worries me because what happens next, given that I think they're going to lose? How can they accept a Nazi president? And now Donald Trump's not a Nazi, but the point here is what can be done on their side to dial things down when they've already drawn such a hard line here on anything to tear down Trump is valid. Anything to tear down Trump is what should be done, including the most absurd lies. I mean, what could be worse than to call him a Nazi? Right? I mean, if they had to try, now Stalin was in many ways evil on the same scale and in terms of loss of life and even greater scale, perhaps, than Hitler. It depends on how you want to gauge that loss of life. But they don't think of Stalin as evil because they're communists deep in their souls. I mean, the Democrats actually have brought the communist impulse within their own party. So they don't view Stalin as evil, maybe a little misguided sometimes. My point here is they think that Trump is the worst thing you could possibly be in all history, and that is delusional. That is crazy person talk. And it's coming from Kamala herself. It's coming from the New York Times, the Washington Post. In fact, I'll get into the Washington Post, the latest here, on that in a second. But the fact that the closing argument of the Kamala Harris campaign is Donald Trump is Hitler, it's pathetic. It's beneath the dignity of the American people to even have this kind of conversation. It is 100% untrue. It will not become true. Trump will not be a fascist. He will not be a Nazi, but they will just continue on with this. They are hoping to just hijack the fear in people's minds at the very last here, the last moments of this campaign, hijack the fear in their minds to do what they can to push Kamala across the finish line. It's pathetic, it's gross, but this is what we are dealing with. Our sponsor here is Birch Gold Group. With the massive tax hikes proposed by the vice president, an almost 40% top income tax rate, 7% increase the corporate tax, capital gains tax on unrealized gains. Kamala's proposing crazy additions to the debt, the deficit. And whatever she says doesn't really matter because she's going to just run the debt into the ground even more. It's going to be crazy. Now, she might lose, you say, and I think she will lose. Okay, well, then Donald Trump will be president. I think he's going to try to turn things around, but he's still got a $35 trillion debt. That can't be fixed in one presidency. So you've got to take action now to defend your savings. And that's where Birch Gold comes in. They'll assist you in, for example, converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. The best news, you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text the word BUCK to 989898 and get a free info kit on gold. No obligation, just information on fortifying your savings before things get really crazy with inflation, the dollar. Who knows where it's all going? Text BUCK to 989898. A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of happy customers at Birch Gold. Text my name, BUCK, to 989898 today. Oh, I've got a news story for you. You haven't heard probably till you listen to this. Kamala Harris's VP choice, Tim Walz, had a secret fling with the daughter of top Chinese communist official during his teaching stint in China. Wow. Daily Mail breaking this story. Tim Walz had a secret fling with the daughter of a high-ranking communist official during his 1989 teaching stint in China. Jenna Wang, 59, claims the VP hopeful showered her with gifts and seduced her at his staff accommodation at number 1 high school in Foshan, Guangdong province. The lovers could not risk holding hands or showing affection in public because Wang's dad was a high-ranking figure in the Chinese Communist Party who would disown her for fraternizing with a Westerner. But their romance blossomed behind closed doors as they sipped tea, made love, and listened to George Michael hits, leading the 24-year-old Wang to dream about marriage and a new life in the United States. No proposal was forthcoming from the future Minnesota governor, however, and the shame of being treated, quote, like a prostitute eventually left Wang feeling angry and even suicidal. That's very sad. Tim was very passionate and romantic. The fact we couldn't kiss or touch in public made it all the more exciting, deeply in love. Yeah. So Tim Walz was getting frisky with the daughter of a top Chi-Com official when he was over there. Look, Tim Walz is a very left-wing guy. I think that he has far more sympathy and ideological compatibility with communism than he lets on. By the way, I don't want to do this thing where everyone's going to freak out about it. Look, the guy was, he was basically doing like a study abroad teaching program, and he thought a girl was cute. I mean, look, it's 24. There are two adults in their 20s. They want to. I don't know. I mean, but what I think is more interesting to me at least, is that I think that Walz is somebody who views the kind of control that the Chinese Communist Party has as what the goal would be for the Democrat Party in this country. I think he wants a one-party state. I think anybody who has their neighbors set up a tip line during COVID to have the police come in because they have too many, there are too many people gathering in a private home. That's the kind of communist snitch mentality that they certainly wanted in East Germany and in the Soviet Union, right? This is something that I think all lines up. I think Tim Walz in his heart is a commie, and that he had a fling with a top Communist Party official's daughter. People are going to say this is Manchurian Candidate stuff. Richard Condon's book, The Manchurian Candidate, where they call it Pavlovian conditioning of captured U.S. soldiers, based on what the Chi-Coms actually did to capture captured Americans by North Korean forces in particular. During the Korean War, there was massive brainwashing, and there were the, quote, turncoats. The turncoats were Americans who were captured during the Korean War and didn't want to go back. They wanted to stay over there. Eventually, a lot of them realized that was a mistake. And then there was a whole, hey, are you guys traitors? It's not really talked about very much anymore. Very contentious part of our history when it came to those prisoners of war and in the Korean War who became these turncoat characters. Anyway, people are going to make a big deal out of this. I don't know that it really, I know everyone's going to make the same joke. Can I tell you what the joke is everyone's going to make right now? They're all going to make jokes about Fang Fang, who was the Chinese spy. I mean, I was on a Tucker Carlson episode, and Fang Fang was being referenced. I was a guest, and the Chiron was the spy who shagged me. And this is true. There's little words at the bottom of the screen. Because of Eric Swalwell's affair with a Chinese spy when he was, what was he, in Congress at the time, I think. People are going to draw all kinds of crazy comparisons. Look, Tim Walz is really a non-factor in this election. The guy's a joke. He's a clown. But I do think that he has an authoritarian, collectivist view of government. And I also think that he's a moral coward. And I think that he's a guy who lies a lot because he's trying to cover up for a lot. But that he thought a pretty lady in China was pretty, and that they got after it a little bit before he was in government or had any access to. He didn't have any access to any secrets. He didn't have a clearance. People are gonna probably get mad at me for saying this. I don't know. It's interesting, but so you know what I mean. You know what I mean? If you're a single guy, you're over there. I don't know what's the big deal. But everyone's going to take different approaches on this. But the problem for me is that Tim Walz is actually a commie in his heart from everything that I've seen. So his fondness for the daughter of a senior Chinese Communist Party official is unsurprising. Next week, Americans will vote in one of the most consequential elections in our history. Our sponsor, IFCJ, wants you to know that no matter what happens, we Americans need to support Israel. This past year, not only have we seen the war rage on in the Holy Land, we've seen an alarming rise in anti-Semitism. This is why I'm a proud partner of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They've been building bridges between Christians and Jews for over 40 years, and since that time, been on the ground helping the vulnerable and providing security for Jews in both Israel and Ukraine. Thank you for your support during this critical time. Your gift helps the fellowship provide food, necessities, and security to those most in need. Standing with Israel and the Jewish people has never meant so much. Go to supportifcj.org to learn more and to make a gift now. That's supportifcj.org. Or call the give at 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. Washington Post. Oh man, they're having a tough time over there. They're getting upset about some things at the Washington Post, and it's all because Bezos said that they couldn't endorse in this latest election, and they are upset. They're very bothered by this in the editorial room, but I just think it's funny. First of all, over 200. Wow. I didn't even know this till I'm looking this up as I'm talking to you. Over 200,000 subscribers have canceled. They have fled the Washington Post after Bezos blocks Harris endorsement. That's a lot of their subs. 8% of the paper's paid circulation of 2.5 million subscribers, which includes print as well. Number of cancellations continue to grow Monday afternoon. Wow, 200,000 people have canceled on them. I mean, the thing with the Washington Post is that it's the Bezos Post. It's owned by Bezos, so boycotts don't really work. He doesn't care. He doesn't need it to make money. So here's a theory, and I would note that this is early in the game, but others would know this as well. Jeff Bezos. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I know a little bit about this because I live in Miami and I have a lot of friends who are in the fitness performance world. Jeff Bezos is taking something. It's not just chicken breast. All right. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not just working out in chicken breast. I can't say what it is. A lot of people would say what it is. I'm not, but he's taking, there's some stuff going on that's, giving him some, and, I think he's getting more conservative. I think what you see happening is with Jeff Bezos, and I think you've seen a little bit of this also with who's the Mark Zuckerberg, that as they are growing in masculinity, they become less left wing. And I'm not saying that Bezos is a conservative. He's not. He still has many liberal thoughts. I'm sure he's very pro-choice, and there's a lot of stuff, but I think he realizes that the communists that run the Washington Post editorial page are insane, and that it's no longer feasible to continue pretending that this is a news organization. It's a propaganda organization for Democrats. But the fact that so many of them are resigning, or I don't know how many have resigned quite yet. Two is what I see. 2 Post columnists. So, that's not so many. It's pretty funny, isn't it? Preposterous. He's just saying we're not making the endorsement this time, and they all cry and they whine, they freak out about it. But I think that Bezos, if he continues on this pathway, look, I think if you're a guy who has ample testosterone and you like to spend time with your girlfriend or wife who looks good in a bikini, I think you are not a lib. I think the chances are overwhelming that you maybe you're a centrist, maybe you're center right, maybe you're center left, but I don't think you'd be a leftist really with that, and also be a very successful business entrepreneur and everything else. I just think that with achievement and with testosterone as a guy, the likelihood of you being a left wing goes down. And Bezos, I know he's been very liberal his whole life, and there's been a lot you can point to and say, oh, look at this. But he does have to operate a very large business, one of the most important businesses in the world, most profitable, biggest revenue businesses in the world. And I just don't think that he can tolerate the lunatic communists that are running around the Washington Post. I think that he has to draw a line in the sand. And he did. And at some point, maybe we could call this the Elon effect, which is when the richest man in the world and the most Bezos would be upset at this, but the most important entrepreneur in the world joins all in on the Trump side of things. I think that says something. And I think a lot of other people who are very prominent, very wealthy, and very like to think highly of themselves hold on a second. Elon, they're saying, meaning the Democrats are saying that Trump is a Nazi, an actual literal Nazi. Crazy stuff. And Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, most powerful guy most powerful entrepreneur in the world in some ways. I think you could say he is overall. He's all on board for Trump. Why is that? And it's not possible to say that they used to have this archetype that they would push, the Democrats, Washington Post would push, of the loser Trump voter. It's poor, white trash that live in trailers and don't have education, and this is what the Beltway elites think of Trump voters. It really is, and that's what they've always thought of Trump voters. It's amazing, isn't it? Trump is a billionaire, playboy, former president, entrepreneur, mogul, and yet because he understands the needs of the working class and particularly the white working class males in this country, they say all these horrible things about him, but they also have a disdain for the people that Trump speaks for, always, the so-called deplorables from the era of Hillary Clinton, right? So it's harder and harder to make this case, though, even to their own side, Democrats to say this to their own side about Trump, because what you really see is that more and more people who are incredibly high IQ and successful and important and are doing meaningful things are like, you got to be in for Trump over Kamala. This is absurd. So Bezos is still a Democrat. I have no illusions about that. But I just think, as the guy's muscles get bigger and, as he's got his hot girlfriend, whatever, he's less inclined to be like, oh my gosh, the patriarchy and all this other stuff. You know what I mean? That's where I see it. That's how I see this. I want to tell you where also I see the election going here in just a second in terms of some of the swing states and latest data on that. We'll dive into it. But if you want to get better at shooting without spending money on ammo or time at the range, get yourself a Mantis X system. 94% of shooters improve within 20 minutes of using the Mantis X. Mantis X is an at-home training system used with your own gun to do dry fire practice. High-tech but very easy-to-use gizmos, gives you real-time feedback on your shooting technique. Just attach it to your gun like a weapon light. Download the easy-to-use app. Follow the instructions. Use it at home or at the range. Mantis X is military technology at an affordable price. Go to mantisx.com. That's MANTISX.com. Now, where is this election heading? I believe a Trump victory. I think 53 Senate seats for the Republicans. 53 Senate seat majority is where I think we will end up. And I think a narrow but slightly better than current majority in the House. That is how I see this election shaking out. And here's why. We could talk about all the data, the early vote and everything else, but the truth is until the actual election day ballots come in, it doesn't matter. We don't know, right? Until we know the answer, we don't actually have the answer. And we're going to have to wait a week to figure this out. Everything about the Kamala Harris campaign is a lie, is fake, or is a misdirection. And I do believe that even though we're bombarded with this constant propaganda from whether it's on social media or in the big news networks and everything else, I do believe that one thing that the American public, by a majority, not everybody, but by a solid majority, can still see is when someone's just a big phony. And I think everything about this campaign that Kamala Harris is running is just, it's just fake. And that's why it's not resonating. And this is why so many people are, I believe, in the swing states, going to just say, I got to cast my ballot for Trump. It is remarkable to me that we're not arguing over who's better at the things that we care about in this country anymore in politics. I would like to think that largely the election would be about, you have the Democrats, you have the Republicans, you have Trump, you have Kamala. We want we want to have a low as possible tax situation with the most economic prosperity, the highest wages, the most domestic manufacturing, incredible innovation in our industries, all this, and that it's who's better at that. We want a secure border. We don't want illegals piling in millions and millions a year into this country, as we've seen under the Biden-Harris administration, 10 million illegals. The border's a total joke. Who's better at securing the border? But that's not what we have. Democrats don't want to secure the border, and they don't want to do deportations. They don't want to make the people who are here illegally go back to their home country. Now, by the way, it's not, let's lock them up. I'm not saying take away people's freedom who have come here illegally. The punishment fits the crime in this case, which is, look, you're not allowed to be here. You're going to go back to your home country. A lot of these home countries they come from are nice. They don't have giant welfare states like America, but they're nice places to be. You know, and honestly, it's like, at some level, it's not our problem. The American people don't have to just be the soup kitchen and the welfare ward for the rest of the world. We don't actually have to do that. But the Democrats don't view it the same way. The Democrats have a different view of things. And this is what I mean by, and then you get to things like climate change. I won't curse in this podcast, but I don't give a you-know-what about climate change. It's a joke. It's absurd. It means nothing. It means nothing. I don't care who's better at it because it doesn't matter. Yes, it's happening. Yes, climate has changed. First of all, there's nothing we're going to do about it that's going to mean anything. And it's not a big deal. But they're Democrats obsessed with it. Abortion. This is the saddest one of all. I sit around and my politics is about how do I keep people safe? How do we keep people prosperous? How do we keep people free? And Democrats overwhelmingly are obsessed with how do we kill babies in the womb for the convenience of hundreds of thousands of women a year. How do we do that? And it's disgusting. It's just wrong. I mean, there's nothing else that I can say that will be more, I think, on point than that. It is awful that this is such an obsession in the Democrat Party. Notice what they do. They talk about women's reproductive freedom, women's reproductive health care. They don't talk about abortion. They don't really use the word. Find me one other medical procedure. If I'm getting knee surgery, do I call it, above the ankle, below the waist care, under the auspices of an orthopedic surgeon? No, I just say I'm getting knee surgery, right? Or if I'm having a triple bypass, I say I'm having a triple bypass. I don't say, I'm having cardiac care afforded to me by a trained physician. They always euphemize the issue. I don't know if that's really a word, but it should be. They use euphemisms when talking about it. And that's because they don't want people to know what's really going on. And then they'll say, what about rape? Or what about this situation? And we say, okay, hold on. But the laws aren't set up for the exceptions. The laws are set up for everybody. Meaning, what are the vast majority of abortions all about? Somebody's pregnant, doesn't want to be pregnant, goes into a Planned Parenthood or some other clinic, and they abort the baby. I mean, that's 95%, 99% of it. But they talk about, what about this one person who had a rare medical condition? And they do all this talking around the issue. And you say, well, we could maybe create, there is, for example, a lot of Republicans say exceptions for, certainly for life of the mother, but also rape and incest. And then Republicans even talk about a heartbeat bill. They say, look, when there's a baby's heart there, we've got to protect that as life. And Democrats say, no, they want to be able to do it unrestricted anytime for any reason. And you say, well, hold on a second. In what world is a baby at 6 months not a baby? babies at 6 months can survive outside the womb. It's a little tiny human. You put it in a, they have incubator for premature babies, and I think 6 months. I think the earliest. I think some babies can even start to survive at like 5 months, but I'd have to check. Outside the womb, I mean. But it might even be earlier than that, so don't yell at me. I'm just saying it's very early, okay? Well, far earlier than actual 9 months, which is closer, I think, to 10 months in a lot of cases of gestation. So, this is what we're facing here. We're not even arguing over who's better at the important stuff. We don't agree on what's important. And that's where there's a real separation in the country. This is where I worry about our future, because if we care about fundamentally different things, that begins to that creates divides that aren't just about, my guy, your guy, this election cycle, that election cycle. It's we're becoming a different people. We're growing apart as a nation within the nation. And that worries me. And I see a lot of that. I see more of that with the Kamala campaign than I've ever seen before. And that's why even if we win this election, there's still so much work that needs to be done and will always need to be done to keep this country functioning the way that it should and to keep us together as a people. I mean, the giving up of our sovereignty with the wide open southern border is a horrible thing to do to America. And I understand that it's rooted, and this is like a lot of things. Democrats use the kindness and the goodness of people, and the left uses the kindness and the goodness of people as a weapon against them. They did this with the trans thing, for example. It just used the pronouns they want. And now it's 300-pound guys, can do the shot put with girls teams. And like, what do you mean they're stronger? So there's a lot of that going on. So, yeah, I have to say we are seeing that there's a different core set of values in this country that is being expressed in this election. And I think it's only going to get worse. So even if Trump wins, which will be amazing, and I think he will win, we've got to address this. We've got to start to agree about what the Constitution means. We've got to agree about what fundamental freedoms we're trying to preserve, because this, to me, it's different than it was in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I was very young in the 80s, but I remember the 90s well enough to know that the kinds of arguments we're having now are about fundamental issues and differences not just of opinion, but of foundational philosophy. And Kamala Harris and Donald Trump represent parties that see the world very differently and want very different things in this world. And that's not sustainable. So something we have to keep an eye on here, and that I think this election will continue to highlight. Look, is it possible to have a premium handgun retail for less than $500? Well, our sponsor, Bear Creek Arsenal, certainly thinks so. The Bear Creek Arsenal Grizzly, for example, comes with upgrades like an RMR optic cut, improved grip texture, and metal sights. Like I'm pretty good, pretty tight out there on the range with my Grizzly. 9mm is what I fire the Grizzly. That's my version of the Grizzly. You can get a compact too. I've got the full size. But it's a great handgun, and Bear Creek Arsenal has phenomenal rifles, pistols, upper receivers, lower receivers. If you're a gun guy or gal, go to bearcreekarsenal.com. You'll be like a kid in a candy store. They've got so much great stuff, and the more you see yourself, like I have, out at the range, the quality, the craftsmanship, the accuracy of their firearms, Bear Creek Arsenal is going to be for you. The Grizzly retails for $295 right now on bearcreekarsenal.com. That's less than $300 for an accurate, affordable handgun. Don't wait to experience your new favorite handgun. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com. That's bearcreekarsenal.com. All right, team, more coming tomorrow. Shields high.